back in our regular time slot on our regular day, and it feels like we never left. It's the Monday Smash on Warchant TV. He's Irish O'Fell. My name is Tom Lang. Tonight's program presented, as always, by State Farm agent Russ Voorhis. And one of the reasons that we're able to bring you this fine program tonight is because Florida State, Ira, on the baseball diamond, took care of business and did not need an extra day to play baseball. So here we sit with Super Noles on a Monday. How are you after a weekend of baseball coverage, sir?
I'm good. I mean, when you think about it, other than your head coach getting ejected early in the game 3, it really couldn't have gone any better for Florida State. Obviously Bellini didn't get an opportunity to work out of his issues early in that game. You had the long weather delay, so then they didn't bring him back. But the bullpen pitched well, and they got a big lead, and they cashed that win away against Bethune-Cookman. And then you come back and, Jamie was as good as Jamie's ever been, 13 strikeouts, career season high. And then you followed up with Mendez in the championship round and have the rally at the end. And so it was so from a combination of getting 3 wins, getting it over with, and also a lot of drama and excitement. It was well worth the price of admission, I think, for FSU fans this weekend.
It was, and it's another lesson that no matter the weather forecast, no matter how cool it is relatively for the time of the year, there will always be a delay of some sort in a Tallahassee regional. It does not matter, and it does not matter if the lightning strike is miles away or not. There's going to be a stoppage. Florida State got it done and over with the first day. And I love Link Jarrett's comment on Friday night as he was getting up from the dais and leaving for the evening. He says, "This is why we played the game right here. That's why we played the first game, for this reason."
No, exactly. And yeah, I mean, I thought he, I'm not saying he should have called out Corey and others by name, but it's one of those things that so many people complain about, and it's exactly why he wanted to do it. It worked, and it worked out beautifully. You'd rather not have a delay. And in defense of the weather officials in the stadium, the first part of the weather delay was some lightning somewhere in the area.
Yeah.
But man, it flooded when it did start to rain. So they were never going to get to complete the whole game anyway. It was going to be interrupted. It just probably was interrupted a little longer than it needed to be.
Yeah, and you're correct. When it decided to pour, it was literally sideways. People say that all the time, Ira, but this was legitimately parallel to the ground. It was something to behold for about 10, 15 minutes. But all's well that ends well for Florida State, who plays the minimum amount of games to advance onto the Super Regionals. And you mentioned this today, Ira, in an interview you did earlier on the Jeff Cameron Show, but Hauser, holy smokes, what an atmosphere. I mean, last night was especially rabid because there was some stuff that happened on the field, but it never disappoints. And once again, this weekend, it was a fantastic setting for college baseball.
Yeah, it was awesome. And, again, we've seen the fan base, the Hauser fan base. I think we've seen it evolve a little bit over the last, 7 or 8 years. If you're paying close attention, I feel like that from the end of Coach Martin's tenure, Coach Martin Sr., you had some old guard in the stands that had been there with him forever. And I think some of them probably, as he retired and then his son takes over and then he leaves. And, there's some familiar faces that you don't see like you used to. I always talk about, you used to always see the faded yellow 11 shirts in the grandstand. You don't see those as much. And I feel like there's kind of been a rebirth. It's a little bit, I think there's some younger people in the fan base now, some younger people, in that, even in the concourse, not just in the grandstands. And so it was cool for them to get a show and to be participants. I mean, the best thing about being, live sports are awesome, but the best live sports are when you feel like you're part of it. And man, that crowd was definitely part of it.
And again, Florida State delivers in a situation on a Sunday night when they were largely stymied in very frustrating circumstances, Ira. Bases loaded. And then through 5 innings, it's 11 guys that are stranded on base. In the 2 games total against Mississippi State, it was 25 guys, I believe, that Florida State left on base. But then they finally break through with an opposite field home run from Cal Fisher. That brings everybody's belief back to life. And then Wes Mendez, holy smokes. I understand that Jamie Arnold won Most Outstanding Player for the regional, and that performance was absolutely lights out. But Wes Mendez was not to be outdone this given weekend, and the emergence of Wes Mendez's arm makes you dare to dream a little bit, because it changes the equation, I think, Ira, a little bit about what this team might be capable of doing. He's been up and down, but lately it's been trending up, and away after last night's performance.
Yeah, and the left on base the night before didn't bother me quite as much because you kind of had the game in hand. There were some innings where they could have added onto it. It would have been nice to just kind of put it away earlier and maybe give yourself some more separation. They didn't do that earlier in the game. But listen, it didn't bother me as much. I know some people were bothered by the left on base the first time against Mississippi State, but then the second time, yeah, I mean, it was bases loaded, nobody out. There's just some situations where they just could not get the big hit, and and that starts to that's why you didn't want to play another game, because when you're the number 1 seed and you're playing a 3 seed and you start to have those moments and you're not cashing in, now all the pressure is on you. And I got a lot of those guys. I think you guys probably talked about it. And I know Corey and Aslan talked a little bit, some on their show too, about, a lot of these guys, even that were on the team last year, they weren't heart of the order guys. Max was a big part of it, but Lodis wasn't, Cal Fisher wasn't. I mean, a lot of these guys really, this is kind of new for them. And, everybody other than Miles Bailey, it seems like he was born to hit a baseball, but I think it was a lot of pressure, and that's why you definitely did not want to play on Monday, because then all the pressure in the world is on you.
Well, and I think that also that's why, the Mendez performance to me is really impressive, because you can't let it get to 3-0 or 4-0 or 5 because of all the empty, empty half innings. You're coming up again, and you're running up pitch counts on Mississippi State starter, and then their primary reliever, the lefty, who's very, very good, and he's upwards of 40 and 50 and 60 pitches, and still you can't break through. Well, you don't want to break the spirits of the crowd and create that disconnect for the home atmosphere, because then it turns into a vacuum of a place. And Mendez was equal to the task and then some. And I thought, Ira, which I hope we get a chance to talk to Micah Posey this week. We put it in a request to talk to him. But the decision, because the head coach is gone, now perhaps you're a conspiracy theorist and you think that there's shouting going on down a hallway or a text message or something, but he's not allowed to converse with anybody on that bench by rule. The decision to leave Wes Mendez in, I want to hear about the circumstances around that, because they had 2 guys ready in the bullpen. I know the bullpen is a touchy subject, and rightly so, for Florida State, but it looked like Wes was nearing the end of the line, and yet he records several outs after that key moment. That's again, when you're thinking about Friday nights next year or starts this upcoming weekend in the Super Regional, that's something that Wes Mendez is definitely going to draw from as a moment of pure confidence.
Yeah, no question. And, we talked about it. I think it was on the Smash a few weeks ago that, it dawned on me midway through the season when Wes started to kind of have some sketchy outings, wasn't quite what he had been earlier. It looked like early in the year. I was reminded of the fact that he's only a sophomore, and he had never been a starter at this level for this long and pitched this many innings. And it felt like we'll see what happens next weekend. But it feels like they did a really good job of kind of managing that kind of dip, that valley, and kind of got him through it to the other side, because he's been pitching much better the last few weeks. And then to navigate that situation, because you're right, man, you're absolutely right about getting himself out of his own trouble, not having to go to the bullpen when one thing went wrong, and then to finish the way he finished was just awesome. And I think it was probably. I asked him about the emotions, because the crowd, the way they were, and the Link getting ejected and all the, the chippiness early, and how much the emotions played a factor for him. And he said he really tried to block out a lot of that out, because he said it affects him. He has a tendency to get emotional, and it affects his pitching. So he was really trying to block it out. But I think at the end, man, that last inning, maybe the last 4 or 5 outs, I feel like he was riding the emotions of Hauser also.
Yeah, guts and adrenaline. I think that's what powered Joe Charles too when he came in. Honestly, my gripe on Saturday was, why is he going back out for another inning?
I heard you talking about that. Yeah.
I put it on the boards too. I told anybody who would listen, I was like, damn it, what are they doing with Joe? But then, the first couple of outs, it was electric, and then he had to look like he had a bit of an energy lapse, and then he was able to push through and finish the game. It's just, it's great to see that level of baseball consistently back at Hauser. It wasn't a one-off miracle from last year, everything coming together at the right time, because as you pointed out today earlier, this was a pretty big reconstruction job for Florida State. Of course, Jamie Arnold is one of the first people you point to as a holdover, but beyond that, Ira and Max Williams in the top 3 of the order, they really had to start and build this thing from the ground up once again, and they've done it. They've gotten into the final 16.
Yeah, and even a guy like Jackson West, who you would have thought, based on what he did at the end of last season, he'd be a big part of it, really hasn't been a big part of it. And, they've gotten some other guys that have just gotten better and better, but then they went out and got some really nice pieces that fit together. And they also, we don't talk about it, but they had a pretty big arm that they were hoping was going to be a big part of this rotation this year, and they didn't get him, or they don't have him. So it's been fun to watch how Link has put this together. And it's a different team than last year, but in some ways it's pretty similar. And you just love the way they're playing down the stretch.
Oh, and this from watching baseball your whole life. And there are a few sports, like I feel like in basketball, in the course of 40 minutes, if you're watching a game and you're rooting for a team, like you care about that team, you will be furious with them at a media timeout, and you will think that they're invincible at a different media timeout. And it all happens within the span of 40 minutes, just the peaks and valleys. In baseball, you will go weeks where you think that everything sucks, and then you will go weeks where you think, man, we're the best team in the country, and it's not close. And I bring that up because in the middle point of the season, everything pitching-wise seemed to be trending downward. And I'm asking myself out loud, and we're talking about it on broadcasts, hey, with Posey, Michael, I mean, is anybody going to be a storyline that's worth, beating your chest about in terms of better development and guys improving? Well, I posted some notes today on the baseball board, Ira. If you look at last year's pitching staff and this year's pitching staff, with all the bullpen troubles that Florida State has had, they're still significantly better this year on the mound. When you're talking about slugging and ops and whip, and some of the other statistics, extra base hits, it all plays into slugging and ops. But actually, even with the bullpen being uneven at best, and the pitching staff the starting staff going through ups and downs, they've actually been better this year. So in the end, the numbers are telling a good story about what Micah Posey's done this year.
Yeah, and man, you weren't the only one questioning that. I mean, he was I think I know Micah has a Twitter X account, but I don't know how often he gets on there during the season. Hopefully not a whole lot. During that one stretch in the middle of the season. And what happens, and this is what we all do this as fans or of our own teams, is you start kind of questioning what you thought. Micah Posey obviously had a great track record before he came to Florida State. What he did at Dallas Baptist was really impressive, and then he comes here, and last year was really impressive what they did with some of those guys and the overall season. And then when things look bad, now you start wondering, well, maybe it was just the guys he inherited here, and maybe it was maybe he just lucked into Carson Dorsey, and maybe, at Dallas Baptist, they had some pros on that, now he probably helped recruit them, but he was, coaching pros. And so you start asking yourself, do we know that this guy is really good? And I got to give Link a lot of credit, because I think there's always a fine line as a manager or as a head coach. And a lot of times they straddle it, in whether it's to back up your guys, to believe in your guys, or when to start getting involved and when to start asking those questions. And we don't know what's going on behind closed doors. Is Link asking questions? Is Link getting more involved in that process, or is he trusting Micah Posey? Every time he's talked publicly about him, he's given him so much support. He talked great about him, obviously last night. And, but as a fan, when things aren't going well, you start questioning everything. And yeah, man, where they are now compared to where they were 6-8 weeks ago, it's really impressive.
We're going to get to football in just a little bit here on the Monday Smash. With in the final 10-15 minutes or so, Michael Langston, senior recruiting analyst, going to join us to give an update about Florida State's first weekend of official visits, and take a question or two if you have any about maybe a 5-star quarterback visiting campus or something like that in the near term. That'll be in a little bit. But we still need to talk a little bit more about Florida State baseball. As it stands right now, if you're following along live on Warchant TV, it would appear a Pacific Northwest road trip is in line for Florida State, at least as we sit here in the bottom of the fourth. Oregon State leads USC 4-0. There's nobody out. They got 2 on. So they look poised to add to what has been an offensive explosion of the last couple of days. Looks like the Beavers are about to do that again. So it would appear West Coast Super Regional for Florida State. But I do want to get your opinion, Ira, on ejections and ump shows, and just kind of take it wherever you want to take it in that general, vicinity, those talking points, because it's college baseball already has gotten to a dramatic place, and the regional committee was trying to get out in front of that across the country. But the ump show's been going on for decades. Where do you stand on the ump show thing and obviously what we saw last night?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I don't know, man. It's frustrating. Listen, they get paid to do their job. They can do their job. It doesn't need to be about them. Where I get frustrated, and I think when you really get upset is when an umpire, and this is in any sport, you see it in basketball, you see it in football, you see it in baseball, mostly in basketball and baseball, because football, they just kind of wear it. They don't really have technical fouls to assess, or I don't know if they've ever ejected a football coach. But in basketball and baseball, how many times where the officials mess up a call and maybe repeatedly mess up calls, and then when a coach or player complains about it, then they're quick to toss them. That to me is the most frustrating thing. I could take bad umpiring, I can take quick-tempered umpires, but when you're both, and that guy was terrible. I didn't have the best view last night of the strike zone, and that's not why Link got into his altercation and got tossed. But he just did a bad job on the pitch and Link wasn't even complaining about the check swing where he rang up Hankerson, but he should have been. That was the view from straight on does not look like he swung at all. It didn't look like he offered it at all. It was a very minor check swing. And he doesn't go to third base for help. And it was the second time in the first 2 innings where he'd rung somebody up without asking for help. So he already is not a good umpire. And then Link comes out and he's mad because you told us you were going to have a zero tolerance policy, and you don't have a zero tolerance policy. This guy just dropped F-bombs on our hitter after he struck him out and pointed at him, and you didn't do anything. Maybe warned him, but you didn't do anything severe to him. So I want to voice my frustration, and then you're going to only give me a minute, 45 seconds or a minute of just arguing, not screaming, not throwing anything at you, not bumping you, not kicking dirt at you, no Earl Weaver moments, just wanting to talk. And then you're quick to toss him. I just thought that was ridiculous. It was awful. But you got a sense of that guy later in the game. First of all, some of his strike three calls felt like a little bit of an ump show with the delay. But then later there was a call. It was Mississippi State's coach came out and wanted obstruction, I think, on the bases.
Yeah, it was a double play ball to Bailey was running at second. Yeah.
And so when the umpire comes out to announce the ruling, man, it was like he was going for the Academy Award. He just took a delay, and it's just like, man, just chill out. So I thought that guy was the worst of all worlds. He was not a good umpire, and he was quick to toss him, and he wanted it all about himself. So hopefully we won't see that guy. We certainly won't see him next weekend because it looks like FSU won't be there.
Correct, Amundo. And it was both ways in terms of the strike zone.
Yeah.
There are some strikes. You fall out of your chair, and yet it's going to happen. And still, like in the 9th inning, what happened to Mississippi State, there were a couple in the 8th inning as well. But there's one, a kid's a right-handed batter. It almost hits him in the crotch. And it's like, he's like, yeah. And the kid gets lost. He's, what the hell is wrong with you? I get it. They're not paid millions of dollars. They're not at the level of anything close to Major League Baseball. But Ira, you know what? The minor leagues have shrunk. So as Link Jarrett is often saying that things have elevated in the college game in terms of the quality of play because you got better players across the country, we can do better with these umpires. I mean, my God, why does it always have to be a talking point, and a rightful one every single week?
Yeah, my last frustration with that whole thing was, again, the bar, because I had a lot of people who are baseball people come at me last night on Twitter because I said I thought it was bad umpiring. And they were like, once the umpire tells him he's had enough and turns around and walks away, you kind of have to stop or you're in danger. And so Link kept going. So that's why he got tossed. But my point was, man, your threshold for getting to that point where you're done talking, I'm going to give a head coach of a team in a super regional a little bit of leeway, especially when I've screwed up in the first place. So to get to that point as quickly as he did, based on what Link did, I thought that was terrible. Again, you're taking a college baseball team who, listen, Florida State deserves a ton of credit for the way they battled through it. They stuck together. They didn't get emotional. They played great the last 7 innings of that game, but it didn't have to go that way. It could have gone terribly. And you took their head coach away for really nothing. I mean, to me, it was like Link was driving 65 and a 55. It was not crazy. And just Just everything about it I thought was bad.
Baseball people understand too, if you're really into the game, that the the burden of being thrown out, or what it is you have to demonstrate in order to get tossed, you're allowed so much more leeway in a postseason setting. It's just is. It always has been, especially in the bigs. You hear it in a broadcast in the bigs if a manager comes out of the dugout. Let's say, well, he's going to get his money's worth, and they're not. He's obviously not going to get tossed. You're not in this situation. There's too much on the line. That guy didn't give a damn last night about how much was on the line. And they had just chucked a coach from Northeastern earlier in the day.
Yeah.
So good job. Let's play 2. Let's eject 2. And then they threw out like 3, or I don't even know how many people they threw out.
Guys.
At the end. They didn't
care. And the hitter that got tossed, he rung him up on a ridiculous pitch. Like you said, it was both ways.
It was this far off. It almost hit him in the crotch, I swear. And it's like, you're out. Okay, man. All right. You want to go home. We all get it. So Florida State will likely be playing. You never know. USC could come back, but it doesn't look likely.
Based on what I was watching last night, I did not have a lot of hope for USC today. They looked awful last night.
You minced no words about USC in the green room before we started this program, and your thoughts about what USC baseball is.
I don't know how they won whatever games they won, but watching them last night, man, it looked like JV high school. They looked terrible.
I have one more question about Florida State baseball before we move on to football. But before we get there, let's talk about State Farm agent Russ Forrest, the sponsor of tonight's program. He's been a sponsor of the Smash for 2 years now, and a sponsor at Warchant for a lot longer. Extremely supportive of what we do in the Warchant Multimedia Network. Very, very much supportive of what Florida State Athletics does across every single manner in which you can donate to Florida State. You can support Florida State. Russ Forrest is always there for his Noles. So he can be there for you, Ira, if you have any insurance needs in the Southeast.
Yeah, no question. And, a lot of people that we work with and you and I have gone through kind of the process with Russ, and we can speak to how well he, not only the knowledge he has and his staff has, but also the customer service, just really good people. And the fact that he is located conveniently in Jacksonville in terms of the brick and mortar, but they do service Florida, Georgia, and Alabama. You can call them. You can go to the website and request information. He always appreciates it. He'll text me and Gene and you sometimes and let us know, hey, just got, a couple calls from Warchant or people that saw us on the Smash. And, any advertiser wants to know that they're getting return on their investment. He supports us not just because of that, because he loves FSU and he's a big Warchant guy, but he also likes to know that he's getting a return. So if you do ask for information, please mention that you heard about him on the Smash and at Warchant, and that Tom and Ira really talked him up big, and so that helped him make a decision. But again, there's a ton of different insurance options. You may already have your own coverage right now. Just give him a shot, give him a chance to earn your business.
And if you have any questions, his staff is excellent. I'm a customer of State Farm agent Russ Forrest. You can be as well if you live in either state, any of the states of Florida, Georgia, and Alabama. His website is his name, russforrest.com, russvorhis.com. 5-0 Oregon State currently right now out in Corvallis. If this super regional this weekend, Ira, were to start Saturday and run through Monday, because that's what can happen super regional weekend. You have Friday beginnings of the best of threes and Saturdays. Let's say that Florida State goes Saturday, Sunday, and if necessary, Monday. Your pitching staff, your rotation, head coach Ira Schofel is in what order? Do you start with Jamie Arnold, I would think, but then from there, where do you go?
Yeah, I definitely start with Jamie Arnold, and then I go back and forth a little bit about this. I part of me thinks maybe I would go Vellini, just because. Well, and again, I should do a little bit more research on Oregon State and just the matchups and all those things. But I do feel like Vellini will do well in that moment. I don't, and again, West was lights out. It was incredible. But I wonder if now I don't know, just kind of, you're coming off of that incredible effort. I might try to go to Vellini and then go to West if you need that deciding game. Or if Vellini gets in any trouble, maybe go to West at that point. But I don't know. I think it makes sense. A lot of people are going to want to go to West in the second game. I could go either way. I'm talking myself into going to West.
Yeah,
in the second game.
That's a special outing, and it does look like, at least in this moment. And William asks, if we do play Saturday, will Jamie have enough rest? Yes, it'll be normal rest for him because he'd have a full week. For Vellini, look like his arm is getting a little tired. Now, that can bounce back. You can have dead arm for a period of time, but he just doesn't look quite as sharp as he has the last couple of weeks. That doesn't mean that can't change. Sorry.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I was going to say definitely did not this past weekend for sure.
And Link alluded to that they were actually tinkering with if he had been pitching better, they would have thought about, even with a 2-hour, 20-minute rain delay, letting him go back out there just like Bethune-Cookman's pitcher did, who was unheralded awesome this weekend. That was one hell of an effort. Again, after a 2-hour rain delay. Looking at Oregon State's batting lineup tonight, they've got 7 out of their 9 guys are right-handed hitters. So with Florida State, doesn't matter. Everybody's pitching from the left, all 3 starters. But if that is indeed Florida State's opponent, we will see what happens. Again, if you're a betting man, are you putting big minus money on a Saturday start, you think, or could it still be a Friday?
You would hope so, man. You would really hope so. I mean, if you're going to send Florida State and Oregon State were basically interchangeable, I think, 8 and 9 seeds. So it's not like, Florida State's this, underdog that like doesn't deserve a lot of respect. I mean, Florida State was probably a top 8 seed for most of the season. And so it would be pretty unfair to have them wait and then have to travel across the country on Tuesday and then play on Friday. So I'd like to see it on Saturday, but you never know for sure.
It makes sense. When we now switch over to football, we'll be talking about a very, very important position group. This is something that we've done now on Warchant TV for 3 offensive position groups. We've got a playlist available on Warchant TV if you want to see breakdowns about the Florida State running backs, wide receivers, and offensive line. Today, the bright and shiny position. It is the Corvette of position groups. It's the quarterbacks, led by transfer Tommy Castellanos. But it's an interesting quarterback room, Ira, because in the spring, Florida State had a freshman emerge for at least a period of time. Before spring even began, backup Brock Glenn was described as a winner by the old school guy, Gus Malzahn. Seems to like him a lot. And then Florida State added a transfer from East Tennessee State that does seem to be able to run Gus's system. And by run, I mean the pun, quite literally. He looks like he's a good running quarterback. What do you make of this quarterback room after a spring's worth of intel? And what are some things that you're going to be interested in as we approach fall about the quarterback room and into the season as well?
Yeah, I mean, I'm very excited about Tommy at quarterback. I was excited when they signed him. I know a lot of people were not, and a lot of people were kind of suspect of him, but I think it's a perfect marriage. I thought when you bring in Gus Malzahn as your offensive coordinator, I really felt like a guy like Tommy Castellanos just fits a whole lot better than Luke Kromenhoek or I think Brock Glenn can do what they want him to do. But I really felt like Tommy was a natural fit for that kind of offensive system. And again, you can move the football, you can win in football a lot of different ways. The nice thing about having a guy who can really move with his legs is it takes a little pressure off that offensive line. If you've got a great pocket passer, well, okay, but you better protect. And, Tommy, because of his athleticism, I don't think you have to be great on the offensive line. You just have to be good enough to run the football and good enough to give him a chance when you do take those shots. But, it's going to be getting the ball out of his hands quickly. And, one thing I would say about Tommy that I think people need to give him some credit for, or give him some grace, is this will be the first time he's really had an offense built around him. When he first got to Boston College, he was not the starter. They had a returning starter, I believe, early in that year, and they got benched. And then Tommy just kind of came out of nowhere and became their guy. But they were learning on the fly. They didn't know what they had in Tommy Castellanos, and they were kind of figuring it out. I think that often those offensive coordinators, I think they had co-offensive coordinators. I think they did a good job that year with him and finding ways to make it work. But then last year with Bill O'Brien, it was completely the opposite. They tried to hammer him into, a square peg into a round hole, and it didn't work. And even though it didn't work, his touchdowns, interceptions were 18-5. His completion percentage went up. I think he did everything he could to make it work, but it was not built around him. This is built around him, so I'm excited about it. I get the skepticism. He's not an elite passer, but with Gus Malzahn running the offense, calling the plays, and with the weapons they brought in, man, I'm excited about Tommy.
Yeah, this is one of those deals where, I've said it. I wasn't thrilled when Gus was hired. Like, he wasn't the first guy I was hoping Florida State would go grab if they're looking to get an offensive coordinator. But if you're going to get that guy, then this is the quarterback you go get. Like, if they had gotten Tommy Castellanos and let's say Mike was still the offensive coordinator and they did not make a hire that was going to call plays and install the offense, I don't think I would have liked that fit either, because, Jordan Travis towards the end ran less and less. And so it wouldn't seem like a natural fit. This is a total fit. And you just foam at the mouth at the potential of these numbers, especially on the ground. This is a former 1,100-yard rusher. Yeah. We say 1,000 yards. We got to give him credit for that extra 100. 1,113 yards and 13 touchdowns 2 years ago. And you're right. That was with an offense that wasn't built around him. Yeah. So what do you think is a fair over-under in the era of sports gambling? What do you think is a fair over-under of rush yards for Tommy Castellanos? Like, before the season begins, 800 yards, 900 yards. Obviously, they're going to have more weapons to be able to distribute the ball to, but I would think they're going to run him a lot this year.
I would, but I also, know you're going to want to be careful. And I think that was part of what was going on with Jordan Travis. Like, especially in 2023, I think that they felt like with the weapons that they had brought in, you bring in Keon Coleman, you got all these weapons out there now, and you don't want to take too many chances with Jordan Travis, and what obviously would end up happening. And so even if your offense is not operating at max capacity, you're doing enough to win these games. So I think this is a similar situation to a sense where there would be such a drop off, I feel like, from Tommy to anybody else, that I really think they're probably not quite what he did 2 years ago. Because also what was happening 2 years ago was, he had to make plays. They didn't have a lot of other weapons around him on that team when he was at Boston College. He's got a lot more weapons now. I think you're going to have hopefully you'd like to think they're going to have a better running game. And then also you got some really nice targets out wide. So I'd put the number at about 700. I think, because I think if you don't need him to do it, I don't think you want to take too many chances. But yeah, man, he could run if he was built like Cam Newton, but not even Cam Newton, just somewhere in between him and Cam Newton, I think maybe you run him a little bit more, but I think they do have to be a little bit cautious.
Yeah, so looking back at that year 2 seasons ago with 1,100 rushing yards, he had 215 carries, which if you take it into a 12-game season, that's nearly 18 carries a game, including sacks, which is a contact you don't want. But that number's really high. Like, that would be, if he runs the ball, Ira, you think more than 8 or 9 times a game. That's,
probably not a great sign.
Yeah, it means that you're depending upon him in a way that you probably didn't anticipate you're depending upon him. And they also, to close the book on talking about Tommy Castellanos, I totally agree with you, given that they worked on something specific with him, that Bill O'Brien was trying to mold him into this other thing and totally ignore what he's good at. The fact that it was 18-5 touchdowns and interceptions, that it was a 61.5 completion percentage, they're not getting a bunch of dink and dunks in that offense. In the Gus offense, Dominic Robinson has shown this in his breakdowns of Gus Malzahn's offenses. They love layups early for quarterbacks. They like to get that number rolling. And of course, there are going to be deep shots in this offense. But I do like that he responded to Bill O'Brien's challenge, not by totally failing from a statistical standpoint, but actually showing some versatility to his game.
Yeah, and I think, going into that situation, a lot of people have asked, like, why didn't he transfer when Bill O'Brien got hired? I think Tommy Castellanos believes he could be an NFL quarterback. None of the people watching this may believe it, or very few. I can't say, but I believe he does. I think he looks at the Kyler Murrays and some of the other guys out there and says, you know what, I can do that too. We'll have to see. But from that standpoint, I could see saying, you know what, this could be a really good thing, assuming probably that he's going to mold some things around me. But I just don't think that was the case. I think he was constantly getting graded negatively because anytime he escaped the pocket. One thing that, just talking to some people that are close to Tommy and, familiar with his time at Boston College, some of the plays that he would make that year, again, they had really, if you go back and look at that offensive staff under Hafley, I think it was a really good offensive staff, and it was very experienced with some guys with some NFL chops. And I think from what I hear, a lot of the plays that looked like they were totally off script were just Tommy running around, including some of the plays against Florida State. As people have gotten to talk to Tommy, they've learned that some of that was not really totally off script. Like, it was kind of that was baked into the offense was, hey, when you need time, do this, here's our, principles for the receivers. Cause there were a couple of times, I think even in the FSU game, where it's like, man, where's he throwing the ball? And all of a sudden you'd see a guy come wide open. And apparently some of that was it was actually practiced. And so I would assume Gus Malzahn's going to be doing some of that type of stuff too. The fact what I like about that is when the play breaks down, it's not just take off and run. It's also like there can be principles to the offense and to scramble to set up a pass. And those plays, man, sometimes those are your biggest plays because, everything goes to hell on the defense once you get off script. So, again, I think I was not as down on DJ as a lot of people were. So if you heard me saying that, you might say, well, you weren't down on DJ either. I still say if they could have run the ball at all, DJ would not have been as bad as he was. The biggest problem with that team to me was they couldn't run the ball and they had pretty poor wide receiver play. This will be different. I think they're going to have a much better offensive line, much better play at wide receiver. I think you added a couple of nice backs, and I think Tommy's a much better playmaker where he doesn't need things to – DJ needed an offense to function. Tommy doesn't necessarily need it to function.
That makes sense. And to footnote your point about NFL staff, under Hafley, you're right. A good point. Rob Chudzinski
was on
13 years in the NFL, coaching experience-wise, and Steve Shimko, who was also with the Seattle Seahawks for a brief stint before he came back to the college game. So, yes, on the offensive side of the football, they did have quite a bit of NFL experience even before Bill O'Brien got to town. In terms of the next line of the depth chart, it started with some buzz about Brock Glenn early on. He looked pretty good, and obviously in the offseason workouts, Gus Malzahn was very impressed with what Brock Glenn brought to the table. His skill set isn't a total square peg round hole for what Gus wants to do. He's got mobility to him. And then Kevin Sperry gained a lot of praise by the end of camp, heard his name an awful lot about fearlessness and the ability to throw the ball down the field, all the throws, all those kinds of things. Florida State does add Jalen King from East Tennessee State in the portal. But what do you make of the battle for the backup spot? I mean, this still probably is Brock Glenn's job to lose. And then does Kevin Sperry, do you think, maybe have a chance to make a statement during the season, maybe to see about getting some more important reps? Because Florida State does have two of those style games, weeks 2 and 4 this football season.
Yeah, Brock Glenn to me is still a mystery. When we saw him just in practices as a freshman, we felt like there was some stuff you could work with there. I mean, before he got thrown into action, like he looked pretty good. He looked better. We would talk about in practice, better than AJ Duffy ever looked at practice, better than Chubba Purdy looked at practice, honestly better than Tate looked until later in his career. So that you felt like there's some good stuff with Brock to work with. When he gets thrown into what he got thrown into at the end of the 2023 season, not a fair situation. His first game is in the swamp. And his second game is, he gets emergency duty in the swamp, and then he has to start the ACC championship game. So it's not really fair to judge him on that. Then last year, I felt like I wanted to see more out of him when he did play. So that kind of had me a little bit down on him towards the end of last season, that maybe he's a guy that can practice, but maybe it just isn't translating to on the field on Saturdays. But what's not fair about that is everybody that took snaps at quarterback looked bad last year. That offense was a disaster. So is it fair to even hold last year that much against him? Now, the Duke game, I don't think Mike Norvell helped him out with the play calling, those 3 turnovers. But at the end of the day, you're the quarterback. You can't turn the ball over on 3 consecutive plays and end your team's chances of winning on your own side of the field. So I'm not high on Brock Glenn right now based on what we've seen. I don't think anybody could. But I do think he's a little bit of a mystery because I feel like he's got some excuses at least built into what we've seen out of him so far. Kevin Sperry was probably one of the top storylines of the spring, even though we don't know if he'll play this season. But just how exciting he is as a runner, his athletic ability, how smart he is. He's played in several different offensive systems in high school. He seems like a great fit for Gus Malzahn's offense. There's a lot to like about Kevin Sperry. We'll see about this year, but maybe down the road. I don't know if he's going to challenge Brock this year, but definitely he'll be in that race next year. And then, the King, the transfer, I think that's going to be an emergency thing. I mean, it sounds like he wants to redshirt. He sounds like he wants to sit out this year and then be in that race after Tommy Castellanos, whenever Tommy's done. So, I think it's nice that they've got guys that will, I think whoever gets plugged in will have a chance to succeed. That was not the case last year. And so, overall, it seems like Gus has got some guys that he likes. These are all, listen, at this point, Kevin Sperry's a guy that this staff brought in. Gus Malzahn brought in, with Mike Norvell, brought in Kevin Sperry. They brought in Jalen King. So from that standpoint, you like that. You like that they're getting quarterbacks that instead of just taking leftovers or whatever they were stuck with.
Well, and again, it's worth reminding ourselves that this is a new offense, everything but the head coach. It's airdropped, a brand new offense on the field. They're wearing the same laundry, but Richie Leonard might be one of two guys that are in a 6-man rotation that are the same the offensive line. You got a new starting tight end. You got at least 2 out of 3 starting wide receivers that are brand new. Roydell Williams will be in that running back rotation, but Gavin Sawchuk is new. Cromaz new. The quarterback is going to, this is a total mystery as to exactly how it's going to look, other than the context clues of Gus Malzahn's career, which has been very productive on the ground. And having a quarterback who can run will be interesting. And Ira, not only Alabama game that everybody's looking to, but when you're trying to figure out what you have in Brock Glenn in this offense, because it's a different test altogether, and then what you have in Kevin Sperry, you're going to get some exposure early on. East Texas A&M and Kent State are interesting games for that reason, because you get to see how those guys battle it out and learn a little bit more about what Gus wants to get out of those guys with very important reps early in the season.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Also, it's not like Castellanos is a young quarterback in his first season as a starter where he would need those 2 games. Like, you'd need to give him every at-bat as possible during those games to kind of build things. Now, you would think for the offensive line, because of what happened this spring, and they didn't have a ton of continuity. The Alabama game is basically going to be like, just get through this Alabama game, and maybe those guys kind of tinker and work some things out over those next couple of games. But from a quarterback standpoint, you'd love to see Castellanos with a baseball cap on the sideline, maybe at halftime or early in the third quarter in those games. Got to give our guy Matt a shout out in the chat. He's hyping up Kevin Sperry because he's a former Frisco football player, Frisco, Texas, and so Matt is got to promote his guys.
I've never understood Texas pride until I met Matt Lasser. Now I understand it a little bit better, and I get it, and it's cool. I appreciate that. And Florida State is in on another quarterback from the Texas area that we'll be talking to Michael Langston about in just a few moments here. We got a couple questions that we want to answer before we bring in Michael. One from Nancy, who says, "Do you think we will handle the time changes about baseball a little bit better than we did when we went to Cal?" Hopefully so, Nancy. Link Jarrett is very concerned about itineraries, body clocks, travel, all that kind of stuff. But at least, Ira, he doesn't have to concern himself with coming back to Tallahassee and playing on a short week, because God knows he's still mad about that.
Yeah, no, you're right. This time of year, it's just about getting out there and getting acclimated and getting ready for it. Yeah, it's not ideal. It's never ideal. And I think with the difference between baseball and football is football, there's almost a feeling sometimes where you don't go early enough to where it really affects you. Sometimes you just go like the day before, play the game, and it's almost like you kind of try to weather the time change and all that without even getting your body acclimated to it. You're back on the plane going back. Baseball, you're there for 2, 3, or 4 or 5 days, is going to be a lot different. So yeah, I'm sure he's going to want to get them early, get them over there, get them to work through it. And the good thing is, man, he's coached so much baseball and he's played so much baseball. So I'm sure he has a good plan for it. It's not ideal. You'd much rather be at home, but I don't think it's going to be the end of the world.
Once again, last update, I'll give you 5-0 Oregon State there. It's probably going to happen, folks. Carol asked on Facebook. Carol, thank you very much for the question. When does fall football practice start? I hear you. I'm tired of talking about, will Mike get it done too? Let's roll it out there and get this practice going. Do you think you'll have access to any of the practices? And she offers her well wishes for the baseball team. They don't have to go to Dublin this year, Ira. So very end of July, first week of August. Is that about right?
Yeah, I think so. With the game being August 30th, my guess is around July 30th, somewhere in that ballpark for the first practice. They did, they will have a lot now in we've talked about this some. I don't know if we've probably done as great a job at educating people as we should have, but they really get to do a lot in the summer now. They're out there doing walkthroughs for a big chunk of the summer. They're tons of meeting time, but they're actually out there with the team, with the players, going through stuff. So when they hit the ground running for fall practice, it's not like it used to be back in the day. Again, when I first started covering Florida State, the players would go home for the summer, and then they would come back, and the first thing they had to do was their big conditioning test. They had to do 16 110s. And based on what position you played, That's how fast you had to do your 16-110s. If you didn't make your time, you had to come back the next day and do it. And you had to keep coming back and doing it until you could pass the test. But guys would come back and it was like they hadn't seen each other in a couple months. It's not like that anymore. So they'll be ready to go when they do start practice. But yeah, I would think somewhere around the very end of July.
Unfortunately, due to what's happening in Corvallis, we can't do a shot with you tonight. The shot was only if Florida State got to a super regional and hosted a super regional. So we'll have to save. What's the new provision? I mean, if they go to Omaha, we got to do a shot of Smash, right?
Yeah. Sounds good. We're in.
I'm sure that means we're going to play Monday next week, a Saturday to Monday. So we'll have to hold off another week. But we're going to cheers you out there here on the Monday Smash very, very soon. Ira, anything you'd like to promote about what's coming up this week in terms of coverage on the site for football, recruiting, obviously the baseball team, anything else that's coming up that people should know about?
Yeah, all of those things. I mean, we still have some recruiting coverage from this past weekend. Also looking ahead to, I mean, this is going to be wall-to-wall recruiting in the month of June. They have so many official visits. They had 6 this past weekend. They also had some unofficial visitors, and they had a camp as well. Mike Norvell camps are going to be coming up, but every weekend is going to be really packed with official visits. I mean, they're probably going to have, they had 6 this past weekend. I think over the next 3 or 4 weeks, you're looking at maybe another 50 or 60 more. So we'll have all that coverage. Plus, as you said, baseball leading up to the super regional with Oregon State, and then assuming it's Oregon State, and then some more football team previews. Like we just talked about the quarterbacks. We've got some team previews that are coming up, the written versions, kind of looking at the depth chart and those types of things over at warchant.com as well.
Fantastic. And remember, students out there, we want you. We want you over at warchant.com. Come on down for absolutely free. Oh, it's so easy, everybody. We'll have a graphic and a QR code up next time. I might get yelled at about that. We don't have right now. But you go to support@warchant.com. Email support@warchant.com with your fsu.edu email address. And you are on board with us for absolutely free. No credit card required. Welcome to the community of Florida State football fans. Welcome to warchant.com. We cannot wait to have you there.
Just be on your best behavior on the message boards. We don't need any rabble rousers from you freeloading students.
Maybe we should get RAs for board, 3 a.m., 4 a.m. board posts. We should have the quiet hours and all that kind of stuff. But we appreciate everybody for signing up. And for those of you that are watching right now, hit the like button underneath the video. We'll be back in just over 15 seconds with Michael Langston, and we're going to talk recruiting Florida State's first official visit weekend. Ira, always appreciate it, brother. I'm sure we'll talk very soon.
Thanks, Tom. See you soon.
We'll be right back.
Contact Russ Voris for an auto quote today.
All righty, Michael Langston. This is like you're in a NASCAR race or an F1 race, and you've completed like lap 3, and there's a whole lot of laps to go because Florida State's going to have dozens more of official visitors on campus over the next few weeks. But we want to learn about what happened this first weekend. We talked about it over the course of a couple of videos. This is a big weekend for Herb Hand, offensive line, trench play in general, a big-time defensive tackle on campus. What did you learn this weekend? What did you hear? And give the people some knowledge.
Yeah, just on by the way, greetings everyone. I think the first takeaway, Tom, I thought about you when I first interviewed Johnny Jones. I thought about you because the main takeaway was at that interview was he said this staff is much more passionate than what I dealt with a year ago. It was a totally flip of the script difference than what he had dealt with before. That was really notable. Like, whoa, take back, and when you see that, but just the overall, the word development that we've seen that these guys, I mean, Johnny Jones said it best. He's like, these guys have developed wherever they've been. Wherever they've been, they've developed. Herb Hand's developed. Gus Malzahn has developed his position and what he coaches, the offensive coordinator. Even Tim Harris Jr. at UCF, he's developed. So I think there's a lot of consistency of feeling, just how these guys develop is totally different than what they've had before. So you see a lot of takeaways. I think with Kendall Gervell, that was one that they really moved the needle. You could listen to his comments of just what he said of just the culture and the family environment, because he said I'm really big on family, and he kind of sensed a lot of that. But also I think he sensed that there was a connection with Terrence Knighton that was really strong. That you got to see kind of what these guys can do when they're around these guys from a personal standpoint. And I think they nailed it. There was a lot of these visits where you're looking to see. I said that when we did our preview before, Tom, like the personal connection with this staff, not personal connection with Florida State. We know what Florida State is. The standard, it doesn't change. They're a very, very attractive program, but overall, what is the connection personally with this staff? And I think for the most part, and you look at that and the elite camp they held on Sunday, I think they did a really good job of really personally investing, showing a personal connection with a lot of these recruits.
Well, it's important to get all of their attention. You have to capture their attention with the new staff. And for official visits, you obviously get more time to talk to these kids and establish those relationships. I also think, Michael, and I know this is a speculative thing, but we know what Florida State had to do in December to go grab a Jesse Harold and a Tylon Lee and a lot of kids that Chroma, of course, they had to invest. And I'm sure that, whether it's a big time upcoming quarterback visit that's happening about a week from right now,
Yeah.
or bringing high caliber trench players, offensive and defensive linemen on campus, they have to be ready to go with an NIL pitch. And I would imagine that is a big part of the equation too, to make sure the kids' interest hold beyond the official visit and into the season until they start seeing some football being played.
Yeah, you want these visits to stick. I would say this as well. You mentioned the Eastman Chromo coming in. I would just give people a tip. I've heard a lot of really good things since he's been there. I think he's already there from what I was told. I think they're liking what they're seeing. He's kind of matching what they thought. So I think certainly there. I think the other takeaway from this weekend too is like when we interviewed Jordan Campbell, we interviewed Johnny Jones, we interviewed Kendall and all these guys. You could kind of sense like the product on the field if they win. Oh yeah, they're going to be there. They're going to be a factor, and that's why I've said before this whole spring started that a lot of these is going to be FSU circling back, but that's why you get these official visits in now so they can experience what they are personally. And then if the product's good, and you see the wins on the field, I think you're going to see some recruitments that they circle back to that maybe these guys don't commit to them right away. Maybe they do. At least some of them probably do. But I think a lot of this is really setting your foundation of what you are. But the wins is something that was brought up. Jordan Campbell, I had a really good interview with him. Stories on the front page. You can tell, like, if there's wins there, it certainly changed their perspective of how they look at FSU.
Well, again, it's important. I look at it as a cold-blooded business at this point. Michael, relationships absolutely matter, and you're right to point it out because a lot of times there's going to be equal bids. When it comes to the packages, it's going to be close. So what's the tiebreaker? It's going to be the personal connection. It's going to be the relationships.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it's important for me when you say something like, if the product is good, Florida State is going to be right there. That means that there's no concern when it comes to a comp package ready to go for these kids because they just went 2-10 and they got a bunch of yeses. Those kids weren't on. It wasn't because they had one magical phone call with Tony White and they're like, that's it. I'm going to go play for that guy. So that means that Florida State is still relevant when it comes to that part of the equation, which is important, Michael, because there's a lot of information out there that, they can't compete at that level. It seems like that from the official visits that they're landing, they're committing to compete at the level necessary.
Yeah, and I think the big thing, I said it before the visit, and we kind of rehashed this a few minutes ago. The personal connections is something that I thought was vital for this weekend. We need to see what these guys were. And that's what we kind of got a sense of from this first weekend. It wasn't about, hey, if 3 or 4 of them commit. It was about setting your foundation of what you are and how that could transfer when you do these June official visits, because I think there's a few in there that I could certainly see them landing. If things keep trending in a positive way, but overall is really about setting their foundation, and that was the key. Why? Because we need to see something what's different between these guys and what they had last year, and that's what I wanted to see.
Got a question from Justin in the chat right now. He's on the Facebook side of the operation, and he's asking, where is Florida State at with Darius Gray? I know he's been on site several times, but haven't heard much on his recruiting. Is he referring to the everything interior offensive lineman from the Virginia area?
Yeah. They haven't been on that one for a while, Justin. So I don't see much there. Now there is another talented guy, Darren Parks, is one that I think he's an in-state kid that They certainly, I think, will get an official visit from, but I don't think they've been in Darius for a while. I think other schools certainly are in much better position, and there's no official visit there to my knowledge. So I'll recheck on that just to be sure, but I think they're probably not in that mix.
If you have any questions for Michael Langston, we got another about 5-7 minutes to discuss what's upcoming for Florida State, or if you want to recap. But in the meantime, we got to talk about Keshan Henderson, right? I mean, we got to talk about a humongous visit that's happening for Florida State a week from now. Michael, we've done a video about this, and a lot of you at Warchant TV have watched it. But, I mean, again, I'm just reflecting on it a few days later. He's not visiting anywhere else at this point. He's a Houston commit. For him to even go on one OV outside of his commitment is a big deal. And it looks like so far it's holding. Like I don't want to believe it until I see the photo that you take outside of Moore that he's actually on campus, but this is a big deal.
It is. It's a big deal, and that's why we've made such a big deal about it and doing a few articles already on it. I think my 10 to watch covered that. I've never had him in my 10 to watch. He's in my 10 to watch. People can read that on the front page. I think Matt did an article as well when the visit was set up. So I know Matt's excited because that's a Texas kid. So, 5-star Texas kid's like, I don't know, that's like, that's caviar, man, to somebody like Matt. But it's massive in so many ways, and we've already went over kind of what it means, but it's like, it is a program changing recruitment to me. When I look at that, based on where they are and where they're going and where they're hoped to be going, that kind of addition, if you can somehow pull that off, hopefully going in that official visit and do that, I think would be a dramatic program changing kind of moment because it impacts everything. It's not just the offense. It's not just, getting another top player. It's just what it would indicate as far as your, the way people view your school, and then the way, possibly for their jobs as far as the staff of way people will view them as far as you got this top guy. We've already seen that with DJ Lagway and Billy Napier. Billy Napier don't have a job if DJ Lagway isn't there. DJ Lagway is connected to Napier. If you get somebody you're connected to and you show a product that they can believe in, they're going to stick by it.
Yeah, 100%. Tony Tokars obviously has had a long-standing relationship with this young man. Mike Norvell being from Texas himself, you can play that card. But rest assured, Florida State's going to play every card that they have in the deck for a player like Keshan Henderson. That visit is supposed to be a week from now, right? So June the 9th, so a week from today. Before that, Florida State is going to have a busy weekend again on campus. And is it a continuation, Michael? We'll do a larger video about this, talking about specific storylines later in the week. But just a general view. Is this another trench weekend? Are there more skill position players? What is this weekend shaping up to be like?
I think it's a mixture of everything, a lot of things, because you're going to have double-digit official visitors. So I think this is going to be a pretty big one. I mean, I think the next 3 weekends, you're talking about, averaging around 16, 17 official visitors. So Ira even pointed out about 50 or 60, and I think that's probably accurate. So it's going to be more of a balanced one, where this one was mostly focused on the trenches. You had a few sprinkled in there of, a 3-star DB and a 3-star receiver. But and then an offensive lineman that, they may push for it, it may not. But this one will be more of a mixture of a lot of those, different positions. So we'll get a view of, like, some guy, receiver, running back, stuff like that. We'll get kind of a view of, the way they recruit and the indications there. So I think it'll be a grand total. We'll have a big list and preview. I've already got an article coming up on 4-star linebacker Rodney Colton, who's one that's going to be on that list, visiting, this weekend. So we'll have a lot of coverage as far as getting up with some of these guys. We're not going to be able to get up with all of them because you're talking about a lot of official visitors, but we'll try to give kind of a glimpse of what these recruits are thinking, going into the official visit weekend. And I always said, like, last weekend was more like setting the tone and setting the foundation, and then this weekend we get a picture of every position. So I think it's going to be a big deal.
We have a contribution. We want to thank Jordan because he's remarking on another Jordan. Thank you, Jordan Newton. He says, how about Jordan Travis being on the staff now? Go Noles. He's all around campus. You see him at the baseball games. You see him around recruiting events. You see Mike Norvell smirking when he was asked a couple weeks ago about, could Jordan Travis be a member of the coaching staff? And he says, hey, if I can make it happen, I'm going to make it happen. This would only be an asset to Florida State in a big way if that were the case, Michael. This is somebody who's just freshly out of college. If you're a quarterback and he came on campus, you're Keshan Henderson, come to Tallahassee in a week, I would imagine Jordan Travis would be made available to talk to a player like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I was very intrigued. I saw Jordan Travis. He was at majority of the elite camp, which is mainly 2027 guys. There was a few 2026 sprinkled in. I have a recruiting wrap and also a breakdown of the top performers for that. If you go to the PRB, you'll see it there. But I was very intrigued by that, Tom. Like that he was at an elite camp. Like, and the baseball team was about to play. I think they're about to, throw the first pitch, and he was out there watching and viewing, kind of what they're going on in the league camp. That's the other note that you got. This is my first time seeing these guys coach in person, and I can say Tim Harris Jr. very impressive. I like what I see. I like what.
What is it about him? So I never get a chance. Like, I got shut out, Michael. So what is it? Is he an intense coach? What does he sound like compared to other receivers coaches you've seen?
The teaching's really like it's not just the way he teaches it. He's emphatic, but it's the teachings of how quickly the guys pick up. I mean, because you're talking about some of these guys that he's never worked with. So some of these kids are young, some of them are 2026, but his ability to the message being received. Like I saw several kids like do something and it wasn't quite the technique that he was looking for. Then he fixed it. Then the next rep, bam, it's good. So his teaching really, how the message was received and shown and showcased after the next few reps after that. I think that was some of the things that stand out. Terrence Knighton, pretty impressive as well. Odell was out there helping out. It's pretty cool watching those two in action. It's very, very hands-on with technique. I mean, that watching Knighton, he's very hands-on of civics, and so that kind of jumped out to me. And then Tony White's just so good at controlling, I guess, calm personality, but calm of what you're looking for in a defensive player, especially linebackers. You saw a lot of stuff with that. So really good. It was really good. I was excited, actually excited just because I didn't do a lot. We didn't do a lot of features from that. It was mainly just me taking in with my eyes what I saw with these coaches because really it's the first time we've seen them like coach.
I'm loving all of that information. So any thoughts on any other offensive coaches? For example, did you see much out of Gus or Herb Hand when they were out there? Because now you got me curious.
Yeah, definitely Herb. There wasn't as great a group for Herb, but you could see, kind of the calmness, but then the fire too when stuff's right or wrong. That's what I like. But his teaching as well is kind of similar to kind of what you saw at Harris Jr., where when one thing was wrong, it was quickly fixed and it was adjusted. Even when they won the rep, that's what I liked. When they won the rep, there was things that they did wrong. That they really corrected quickly. So that the technique is something that the adjustment of technique was something that jumped out to me with a lot of these coaches. Same thing with Gus. You saw a little bit with that. I've already seen Yak a bunch of times, and Coach Thompson certainly a bunch of times, and even in Tony. But those were the ones that the value of technique stuff was really, even when things were. I was encouraged because I saw stuff where kid did something, won in the rep, and it wasn't just about winning the rep. It was about, okay, can you win that rep when you face somebody that's technically sound that can counter what you're doing? And I think that showed throughout the day.
That's awesome stuff. We appreciate those updates. Now I know we're all a little bit smarter about what these coaches sound and look like and coach like. That's cool. Coming up this week, Michael, on the site, obviously you'll be previewing the next round of OVs, but what can folks expect on warchant.com?
Yeah, like I'd mentioned a little earlier, we're going to have certainly official visit previews of we're going to try to do several individual ones that we'll do. I'll do my 3 thing to watch as far as this weekend because it'll be different than what we had this previous weekend because it's bigger. There's more spread out as far as the positions. So we'll do something on that, and then hey, maybe I'll do a Michael's mailbag for you guys. You can get your questions in, and we'll throw out an article of that and whatever's on your mind. But I'm excited, man. Just I didn't know how I felt, Tom, going into this summer with these official visits because it's kind of like it's just things. It's okay. It's lulling, at times, and then man, I got around there in the elite camp and I watched these coaches go, and then being around these kids for the official visits kind of got me a little bit. You feel the butterflies and excitement in your belly just on what you're hearing from you just recruits coming out of this, because I really just my expectations for this weekend was like, okay, they'll say some good things, maybe some positive things, but I was more taken back that the stuff they said as far as the passion and the energy and what the recruits got out of the weekend. It wasn't your general, hey, this is great, I love it here, FSU's a great school. It was like there was a very strong message, and it was a strong indication of connection to the staff personally. So I'm excited to see what June does, and ours not lying. It is going to be pure chaos throughout the month of June. I always dread seeing June on that calendar, because you're talking about camps, you're talking about evaluations, more evaluations, you're talking about official visits, you're talking about you have the 6th of Tom, and then you jump right into what's going to be the biggest recruitment of probably the whole cycle, in the quarterback coming in on the 9th. So right when you get done with the 6th, get those stories done, bam, you're jumping into the 9th, and then after the 9th, you're jumping right into the 13th for that weekend. So,
Yeah.
man, if you don't have a membership, and certainly all the students, we want you to jump on board. This is the perfect time to get on, because there's going to be so much recruiting stuff going on.
It's a lot of activity, yeah, and especially, you get a 1-week trial anytime you join Warchant.com on the paid side of things. First week is free. That first week includes the arrival of Keshan Henderson. So, probably a good time to hop on board. You can get a recap of everything that Michael has broken down, Matt Lasser's broken down from this past weekend, and everything in the week to come. All free. Or sorry, it's $1. Forgive me.
Yeah.
Check under your couch cushion. You'll find $2. So half that. $1 for your first week, and then you get into the main membership, and absolutely free if you're a student at Florida State. It is going to be a very busy time in terms of Florida State recruiting. You're going to hear more from Michael and I on this channel this week, setting the stage for this weekend to come. And who knows, if there's ever a surprise commitment, we'll be on the channel as well. So if you appreciated tonight's content, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and let your Nole friends know where we are right here on Warchant TV. We do want to thank a few people before we sign off tonight. Jordan, thank you very much for the contribution. Jordan Newton, that was very kind of you. You never have to do that, but we very much appreciate it. Everybody who asked questions in the chat, thank you so much. Director Ben Spicer behind the scenes. To our sponsor, State Farm agent Russ Voris, thank you for always having our backs. Irish O'Fell, managing editor of Warchant.com. It was fun chopping it up about Florida State baseball and Florida State football. And Michael, thanks to you, man. And I hope you get some rest these next couple of days ahead of what's going to be a crazy weekend.
Yeah, if there's any positive for people, if FSU's baseball is going to Corvallis, it will make it easier to do recruiting as far as coverage. You won't have to juggle through and jump through hoops, because it'll be so packed. I prefer them to be in Tallahassee, but if you're looking for a silver lining, there's that. But I appreciate Tom. We appreciate all the work you've done as far as the video. Tom does a lot of these videos that we put out on Sunday. He does a lot of stuff behind the scenes. So everyone as a whole, and Matt has been incredible as far as, chopping different things, team basketball. I mean, basketball stuff's been phenomenal as far as what Luke Laux is doing. And I can't thank everyone enough, Ira, and everyone that we've put it all together.
We're going to get one question under the gun. I also want to thank Aslan. He saved my ass on Sunday. That's a story for another day. Tony Greco says, thank you, Aslan. Is Duckworth still taking an OV? I know the Fong bomb was for South Carolina.
That is the plan. June 13th, it's kind of what I've led to. Keshan Henderson's the first quarterback they'd officially host, which I think is interesting. And then next is Duckworth, or I think O'Neal and Duckworth. So you kind of will know kind of where those quarterback dominoes are falling. But the plan is to come in the 13th.
Appreciate you, Tony. Appreciate everybody who's got that green line next to their name in the Warchant logos, because you are members of Warchant TV. The support is always appreciated. All right, Michael, have a great night. It was awesome talking to you. And everybody here at Warchant TV, we'll talk to you very soon on the Monday Smash, probably next week right here on the channel. Good night, everybody.